talked about.
Transitions?
Babies.
Changes.
Potato, right?
Babies and boobies.
Ooh. Babies and boobies. That sounds like a brand.
Beer, babies, and boobs.
Beer.
How did beer make it into the?
Dre.
I barely even drink beer anymore. if I'm gonna be
because
honest.
she doesn't have the babes, you know.
Yeah.
You know.
Never
I
mind.
mean, she
Thank
does
God,
have the
we
boobs,
would
though.
be in a whole, I don't think it'd be a whole other situation if all of you guys are pregnant at the same time.
Oh my God, Sabs, what would you do?
I don't know.
What if Andrea came to you and she's like, Sabs,
Sorry guys,
All right.
Phoenix is closed.
We're
Taking a
shutting down
very
for the
long
next 9
sabbatical.
months. We'll see you guys in 2026.
oh gosh.
Oh my God.
That's funny. Sabs, we're moving to your farm.
That's, yeah. I'm already modeling for that. I gotta figure out how to fucking get a helicopter to you in Florida.
Yeah.
Cross-country flights are a lot trickier.
I know.
I already looked at it, but it's possible.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm hoping the country unites. I was fairly excited about the energy that I felt at, watching the RNC the convention yesterday, and the way everybody seems to be hopeful and excited, not violent and angry.
That's good.
Which is your best possible scenario. I just hope there isn't more fallout. And then there are really stupid people on the internet saying things like, we were like making comments like they wish he wouldn't have failed, and even one of Jack Black's do you see that? Band members in front of a whole crowd of people ran his mouth like an idiot, and they literally canceled the whole show.
Really? I didn't catch that.
I didn't
Wow.
either.
Yeah.
Wow.
Turns out it's frowned upon by the establishment if you wish the death upon anyone, but
Right.
especially a standing or former president.
On a huge public stage.
Yeah.
Was this a...
Here's the biggest issue. The left doesn't want violence. They will get destroyed, like
Right.
wrecked on a level
Right.
and I think they know that. They're like, it's like the kid in high school that's got a big mouth but can't back it up. That's the left. But they'll get fucking destroyed if it ever came to violence. And I'm hoping to God we're smart enough not to let it come to violence, but the problem is if cooler heads don't prevail and emotion does, it's going to come to that.
Well, it's just funny how that side is such a proponent for
Tolerance?
gun
Control?
Yeah, gun control, and now they're angry that the gun didn't work correctly.
Yeah, isn't that wild?
Because it's not the person, it's the gun.
Right. Yep. Yeah, that just the principle there is that which you judge judges you back. Right? And so when you see people screaming judgment at others for not being tolerant, it is safe to assume the person screaming for tolerance is the most intolerant person in the room. And you'll just see that over and over again, because that which you judge judges you back. It's a reflection of what's in you. If you really are a tolerant person, then you're focused on you being tolerant, not judging other people for not being tolerant. That's how you change the world. Anyway, it's an interesting place that we're in. And you're reading The Fourth Turning, right? You haven't started reading. Have you guys read it?
I looked up the link.
I read the cover.
I saw it on Amazon.
You told me the premise multiple times.
I think it is worth the read because I think it ultimately, for me, is a message of hope and helps explain what we're going through.
So there's two, right?
Yeah.
Well, there's Generations, which is the original book, and it's a tome.
It's a big
And
boy.
I have it, but I'm like, I wouldn't recommend that to most people because I think they would be intimidated, and it's heavily...
Intimidated by the length or the density of the content?
It's data.
But yeah.
So it's not even, they're not like writers, so it's
Okay.
not super entertaining reading. It's like data.
Like
It's
textbook
just
data.
a ton
You're
of
right, textbook
historical
data. Because
events.
I think they were
Got
both
it.
professors,
Lovely.
if I remember correctly. So yeah, it's like textbook data. It's not terribly, it's written well in the sense of making their case, but
There's
if you're...
no, the crows were, and
And the blue dress shimmered in the light as the east sun rose, and the dew came down on... Yeah, exactly. Robert Jordan. Oh my God. Yeah, none of that. So there's generations, and then they wrote the fourth turning, which was the last part of the generational cycles. They wrote a single book on that. And then Neil Howe just released, like this month or month ago, 2 months ago maybe, the fourth turning is now, which is taking the fourth turning data into what is happening in the United States at this very moment in time. And I think what makes it useful is it is I think, a message of hope. Like, there's a lot of people that are like, the world's gonna end, like this is horrible. And by the way, there was a lot of people who believed the world was gonna end. When you start getting these like end time, like especially in Christian religious circles, you see the predominance of the kind of end time prophecies and apocalyptic belief systems. It really come to fruition in the United States, not surprising, at the beginning of the last fourth turning, which was like about 100 years ago. And there was a lot of prominent prophets and pastors and people of that ilk that were predicting that the world was going to end then, because you had the Spanish influenza, which was a real influenza, like no joke, World War I, the Great Depression, and World War II, all within 20-something years. Imagine living through that, right? And by the way, we may look back at the end of this and go, imagine living through this.
Yeah.
That's on the table. It's it's not zero. The likelihood is not zero. I just hope that, my hope is that we are more educated and more aware, and that we'll be able to navigate through this more consciously and with a message of hope. So what I did like about, one, I liked how Trump responded to getting shot. That told me a lot about the human that he is. He got up defiantly. I was like, okay, that's a leader. Like, we're not going to point finger at other people, but you could just think about how that could have gone down differently depending on who was getting shot at. And then his message coming out of RNC was one of peace, love, unity, not anger and violence and retribution, which has mostly been his rhetoric, right? So I was like, okay, so maybe somebody's getting a clue. Maybe somebody's, because that's, we need leaders
Turning
who
a
are,
leaf.
Yeah, but we need leaders who are bringing people together, not dividing people. And division is always a tactic to use as leverage of power, to influence. It's just disgusting, I think, personally. So I'm hopeful, but it's a good book, and it's worth the read, because I think it is a message of hope. It's like, okay, that isn't this crazy that we're going through this right now in our society. It's not that crazy that this is what we're confronting right now. This is a cyclical thing. The one thing I will say, and he brings up in the book, is that the past have been largely Western cycles. And this one is interesting because we have a short-term and long-term debt cycle combining at the same time, which is insane, which Ray Dalio talks a lot about that a lot for those who are wanting more information about that. And then a lot of the world now is cycling into the fourth turning. So instead of, like most of the fourth turning, the data sets he was using was from European and US countries. But where we are in the world, like vast majority of the world is in the fourth turning. Like Gen Z, the stereotypical Gen Z description isn't just in the United States. Japan is dealing with this. China is dealing with this. It's like big country population groups are dealing with it. It's not a single, it's not just Western civilization. That has its own set of implications. It's like, well, what does it look like when the whole world is starting to go through these cycles? And he does point out there are regions that are a generation behind for obvious reasons, including the Middle East. But it's super fascinating. So it's worth the read, I think, because key to timing is preparation.
Yeah.
You know what you're into, know what likely is going to happen, so that you can be prepared for it and be part of the solution, not the problem, by not freaking the fuck out.
So you can read one without the other?
They all are standalone books.
Okay.
Yeah. And I think at this point I would read The Fourth Turning Is Now. That's the one, which is the brand new one.
Yeah. Very cool.
Yeah. So I'm excited. I think part of creating real community is we navigate through seasons together, right? And it's fun to see. We've all been together now for almost 10 years. You're 10 years next year?
Next year.
Yep.
Yeah.
Just crazy to think about. So at least 10 years. And so we've gone, I think when we all came together and started working together, we were all single, right? Except for me. I was not single, but you guys are all single. And now we've got married,
With kids.
We've got kids on the way. And I think there's something so beautiful. That's part of the human cycle and these different transitions and these different moments in time. And so I'm excited, but a lot of change is happening, right?
Yeah.
A lot of moving parts.
Yeah.
Soon it's just going to be Dre and I here holding down the fort.
In the trenches.
building the sales teams.
It's so funny. I was telling this to Molly. We did a photo shoot. Was it last year or the year before now?
I think it was a year before.
2 years now?
Whenever you were promoted.
Yeah. And we were that little quarter. Of the magazine. Remember that photo shoot?
The little quarter.
Sorry.
It's like Mike Wazowski on the commercial.
Yeah.
I was on TV.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that photo shoot, that one in particular.
Yeah.
So there's one shot. There's a couple of shots, but the picture I'm talking about is where the three of us are sitting on the couch, and then Andrea is taking
In the
almost
middle.
like center stage in that, and then Molly's also standing. So it's both of you guys standing center. We're all on the couch. And
Sitting.
Yeah, sitting.
Very symbolic.
And so I looked at it, I was like, wow, this is
Prophetic.
so symbolic of what's going on. Obviously, you guys have moved. I'm moving. You guys are staying here. Dre, you've obviously taken on a whole brand new role. And so it's just crazy because I'm like, look at Andrea. This is just so prophetic of like a foreshadow of what's about to happen. And sure enough, like here we are. Unintentionally, that picture just speaks a huge story to me.
I love it. We
It's
should
so
put that in the
magical.
thumbnail somewhere. Put it in the podcast.
Big.
I'll send that over.
The big one.
Not
that
a little
everyone,
quarter.
right, that everyone can see.
It'll still be like a rectangle.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
2080 by 70.
Sign of changes that are happening, which is crazy to me to look back at that picture.
And life would be boring if there wasn't change, right? Change is part of the growth cycle of being human and the experience of being human. And I think navigating change is important and knowing how to navigate change. We're most vulnerable. I talk about this within my business communities within the organization. We're most vulnerable in times of life phases, and where we see people. And I was talking with Vera about this, where we see people fail in the business, and I have a heart around coaching people through these phases, but we see people fail in the business around life phases. In some ways, the easiest life will ever be is when you're a single person, right? Because you're not responsible for anything other than you. And especially if you were a dude, like I tell people all the time, if I was a single guy when I started my business, I could have lived in a van under a fucking bridge if I had to. And I would have if that was what was necessary in order to get my business going. But with every life phase, life gets a little bit more challenging because you have more responsibilities. So I'd say like something I teach pretty regularly is we have at least 2 or 3 opportunities to really mature. And my audience is usually boys trying to become men. When I say this, I think women have a slightly different variation of this. But your first is when you move out of your house, out of your parents' house, and you're a single guy learning how to take care of yourself. That's your first kind of opportunity to mature. How much that happens,
We don't know.
who knows? The next one is when you get married, which, by the way, getting married is not a reason. Maturing is not a reason to get married. But that is an opportunity for men to step up and go, hey, like, I got to become more. And unfortunately, we don't always see it. And then really, I won't say the last opportunity, but really if you don't get it by then, we probably have a different set of problems, which is you're married and now you bring children into the world. We're in a committed relationship, however that looks. But those are really 3 big life phases. And when you're starting a business anywhere in that process, it gets really challenging. And we see people kind of fall off or fail in those life phases. For a guy who's single, he can put all his energy into his business and into his team. It's really easy. Suddenly he gets a serious girlfriend or he gets married. We see people fail all the time in the business because they don't know how to make that transition. They don't know how to do business and have a serious girlfriend. The next big one we see is the getting married and then having kids, right? It's like, we see a lot of guys who maybe they got through, their business changed, but they got through being married, but now they have kids. And they fail there because it's, you're adding more to the plate. There's more responsibilities, and it's hard. And I was thinking, before Kat and I decided to have children, like talking through that, she was like, just talking through the hypotheticals of what it would be like to have a child and run a business. And I think, I don't want to speak for her, but I think she would say now, like, oh, it's a lot harder than I thought, especially when they're young.
At the time when we were of having kids too, I was in a completely different role. I wasn't solely, or not solely, but focused on my own business, where I now have 22 clients plus Fenix and our own companies. I had a lot lighter of a plate then too. So it definitely is different.
Were you doing the hub training during that? What was the timeline? Like, had you already transitioned into that, or were you still in training?
So I had transitioned into working as a hub, but I was still overseeing recruiting for Fenix, and I maybe had like 8 or 10 clients at the time. So that has
22.
doubled down.
Jeez.
Yeah, that's insane, for sure.
Good problem to have.
What would you say has been the biggest challenge being now a mom of a under 1-year-old and running a business with that many clients?
It's hard to point your finger at one thing. It's like there's the mental aspect of it, of feeling like you're not able to do well in anything, really. Like, there is that counterbalance, right? There's not ever a time where, like, you can really manage all things equally. So it's like, okay, I have to focus on my business right now, but then you have this tiny human that's developing more and more every single day that is, like, the cutest thing in the whole world and just loves you. And so you're like, why would I
spend my time
on this when I've got this, like, precious angel in front of me? But then you're also, like, exhausted being the primary caregiver, and you're like, I need a break. Like, don't touch me. Like, leave me alone for a minute. Like, let me take a shower or pee without holding you or crying. And then there's the aspect of, like, still trying to keep up with all of your clients, and you know, to varying degrees, they have their own level of follow through. So I think one thing that's been really difficult for me is the patience with other people. I'm like, what do you have on your plate right now that you can't send me this on time?
Especially
like, it's the same.
Especially a
system.
single dude.
It sounds so judgmental, but it's true. It's
Like, you've got 3 people on your team.
Right.
You're not even going to the field to
Right.
work for your own business. Like, most nights I'm up until 2
Yeah.
a.m.
Yeah.
trying to get it
See
done.
those emails and messages.
And I'm like, could you help me help you? Yeah, right. So, trying to work through that, and then part of it too. Like, we were talking about this yesterday. I think there's just some, like, universal experiences that come along with it. Like, people struggle through these life phases of being in relationship, having kids, and running a business. And then on top of that, like, I handle finances, which money is a really sensitive topic when it comes to couples or businesses. And so navigating through all of those things, like, I could see how, like, right now it's almost like a blessing in disguise that I'm so overwhelmed, because it's like I'm so overwhelmed I don't have the time to actually get sensitive about things. It's like, fuck it, make it work.
That would be a luxury.
Yeah, it would be a luxury to, like, have a meltdown or, like, you know, have some kind of drama or something like that happen in my life. But it's like, nope, I'm blinders. Like, I can only handle what I can handle, and the rest of it is, like, so it puts it into perspective. Like, these are things that would challenge anybody. I I think it helps me to not take it personally and just be like, okay, this is a season. Like, we're going to get through it, got to trudge through it. Like, what would change? Like, I think people can idealize, like, okay, so one of the truths I was talking about was with, like, moms feeling like probably their partners aren't doing enough when it comes to taking care of the baby. And an analogy of, let's say that you have a stay-at-home mom that's maybe not working in particular, but then man leaves the home to go work for the day. Well, man comes home from work and mom is like, oh, whew, like, here, take the baby. And the man's like, I've been working all day. I don't want to continue working by taking care of the child. And the woman's like, well, I've been working all day too, you know? But then you add, like, actually working as a woman on top of that. So it's hard.
Yeah.
But there are things that everybody goes through, and the idea of, like, oh, okay, well, if this person was different or had made different decisions, like, things would look in some way better or different is, like, just not true. So you got to figure out how to make things work for you and just keep a level head. And yeah.
What would you say to somebody who's like entering that season? How would they? What have you found
Buckle
that works?
up. I don't know, just be at peace. Just find happiness in the moments that you can, and you do have downtime. Like, figure out what your priorities are. Good luck.
Thanks for the
I definitely
sage advice.
Don't have it mastered by any means, but I feel like I do a decent job.
You're doing a
coming
badass
through
job.
as a business owner and a mom and a partner.
There's an old saying, and I find it to be true: if you want to get something done, give it to a busy person. Because they just have a different set of systems. They're way more effective at being able to handle bigger loads. But I think you're doing an incredible job.
Yeah.
Obviously, I can see it
thankfully,
firsthand.
like, we're in this together. It would be incredibly hard to have a partner that wasn't in the business with me. I feel like that wouldn't take it personally, that, like, our relationship really is prioritized right now at all, which just, like, sucks. And we still, you know, hang on to those little moments that we have here and there, I think. But it would be so incredibly stressful to have somebody that was not supportive.
That didn't get it.
Not supportive, but that didn't get it. That was like trying to demand more time and energy back to them.
That's something that I'm taking very intentionally right now before baby comes. Because one of my girlfriends said, like, at this point, you guys need to date.
Yeah.
Date hard right now, because before you know it, the baby's going to be here and it's not just going to be you two anymore. And so I took that to heart because, granted, Charles and I have been living together for such a long time already, but then things, you know, work happens and, like, life is happening, and then we weren't, like, dating or whatever. But then I was like, no, you need to take me out. Like, you need to take me out, go somewhere, do something fun, go out to dinner. And then he was like, okay, like, let's do it. And so very much like, and then dating for me is so simple because all I want to do is, like, an activity and eat something chill, like eat, like literally. And so even if it means just biking or walking for some, like, walking around, we'll typically, like, walk to the block, find a restaurant or something, or, like, go to the hotel and eat. But it's just, like, something simple where, like, we're actually connecting, because, like, we can get so deep into just working, or, like, even if he's on his phone, like, researching something that he needs to configure at work, he's still working. And so I'm like, no, we need to make time. And then even when you said buckle up, I'm like, I've been trying to hold on for this. I've been trying to hold on, like, throughout the last 7 months now, trying to figure out, like, how am I supposed to navigate through these seasons? But again, sage advice when you're like, find peace. I have moments throughout the days where Sandra and I kind of, like, talked about it. She was like, I just feel like everything's moving so quickly. I haven't had time to talk with baby. And I'm like, I also make it very intentional to be like, sitting down or lying down, and I have my hands on my baby, and I'm like, this is it. Like, we're going through it. And I can feel him growing, and I can feel him like there's moments where like he's moving, and I'm like, thank you. Like, thank you. Because now at this point, they tell you to count the kicks, you know, like you're making sure that the baby's still doing well. And I'm like, all right, you're kicking now. I'm like, all right, cool. And how are you feeling? Like, I'm feeling good. Like, you're like, I'm tired because of you. Like, I'm so tired because you're taking all of my blood and my oxygen, but it's worth it. And it gets me very emotional because it's like, I wanted this without knowing I wanted it. Right? Like I think I talked about it sometime last year with my goals. I'm like, we're getting pregnant. Or at least we're thinking about getting pregnant or whatever, like having a baby. And then speaking that truly to existence now is just kind of like, I knew I was going to be here. I didn't know how and when exactly, but it was going to be here. And I'm just holding on. Like I'm holding on to this next phase of me. And I'm trying to figure out who I will be in this next phase, because it'll be completely different, you know?
You don't have a choice in that. You're right. I mean, one of the things that I found that worked is literally schedule date night in the calendar. Like have that for anybody who's important in your life, like put it in the calendar, make it intentional, because especially because the kind of work we do is different than during the Industrial Revolution. You worked 9 to 5. We came up with an arbitrary 40 hours, and it was an arbitrary 40 hours, but it was based on labor code, like what the physical body could handle labor-wise. But we live in a time where most people aren't doing labor work anymore. And as a result, especially because of technology, we literally could be working all of the time. There's literally no end to it. And so being really intentional about making time for the things that are important to you is important. So like, things that I've started doing is I literally keep my phone on my desk, because if it's on me,
you're on it.
Literally, I'll hit a text message, respond to one person. I'm like, oh, there's only 62 more text messages here. Let me just rip some of these. And then it's like, this, I need to research this before I can answer this. And then suddenly an hour goes by and I'm like, what just happened? So I've gotten really intentional with, as long as there's no fires and there's nothing urgent and I'm done for the day, I literally put my phone away. Also modeling that for my older kids, because they pick up what you're doing, right? And so I notice when I'm not on my phone as much, they're not on their phones as much, which is really important to me. But yeah, I mean, dating changes when you have children. And children are obviously a blessing in their season, but they will radically change your life. And there's a lot of things you want to get out of your system while you're single, or a married couple that hasn't had kids yet, because everything changes. And there's just, you prioritize things differently. You have to. I guess, maybe, I think you have to if you want to be a great parent.
Yeah.
So, and then I think about, like, I was raised by a single mom who had 2 boys under the age of 2. And I'm like, how the fuck did you do this? Like that's crazy. A single parent situation is mind-blowing to me.
My best friend, same scenario. Oh my god. Yeah.
Yeah, shout out to single parents who are figuring out how to get it done.
They find peace.
They have to find peace, exactly. And all you can do is your best, right? Do your best.
And somehow I would imagine that your bandwidth, you're capable, like you're saying, if you want to get something, like somehow I'm hoping and trusting on just that the magic of bandwidth, like intentionally increasing, because I see it like even before, you know, pregnancy and just kind of all the changes that I'm going through right now with like moving and work and all of that. But I see it almost the same too with work. It's like when you start entry level, you have these responsibilities and you kind of start to take on more, and before you know it, you're doing more than you thought you were capable of, and somehow it's not easy, but somehow you're managing through it. So that's kind of how I envision it, you know, happening. It's like, I don't know how, but somehow I will make
Yeah, I think women turn into superheroes when they become a mom.
Yeah.
Like I see it with all of my friends, my sister, and even when I'm like watching the girls for them, I'm like, how the hell are they doing this on top of working, on top of taking care of the house, on top of being in charge of dinner, things like that. I'm like, I don't know how they do it. Like, I thought I was busy, and then you bring in 2 little ones running around that you're constantly having to watch and make sure that they're okay, because your health does not matter when you have little ones. You're worrying about them. And so it's like, there's a whole, like, the moment you give birth to them, you automatically put your cape on as a superhero, if I'm going to be honest, because I don't think people give mothers enough credit for what they do. Even stay-at-home moms, I think that there's such a, like, it's either you're a stay-at-home mom and everyone loves you, or you're a stay-at-home mom and, oh, what do you do all day, And I hate that, because it's like, well, why don't you stay at home and watch these kids all day long and have a smile on your face, right? So I don't know, that's just my 2 cents. I don't have any children, but I think that women are just superheroes in general.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, the other thing that you add on top of that is literally your brain changes. So there are times, like, I'm in a meeting or something, and I'm like, I literally can't think of this word right now. Come back to me. And they're like, I can't process things the way that I did the same way before. And I'm like, crap. Okay, this is not efficient. I gotta find another way, like ChatGPT, help me out here.
What is the word?
Feed my brain.
What is the word I'm thinking about right now? Go.
I will say, from an effectiveness and an efficiency standpoint, I think the reason your bandwidth increases, your capacity increases, is you get better at not wasting time. Maybe wasting time is a rough way of saying that, but I think most people, if they took an inventory of their time, there is a lot of wasted time. It's not efficient time. So the more that's on your plate, the more you realize you can do, because there's less wasted time, which isn't me saying that it's not important to have white space in your day or time where there isn't things you're doing, but there's just a lot of time we spend doing nothing effective or efficient. And when you don't have the capacity to do that, you just don't waste time, and you realize, wow, I can do a lot more than I used to. And I have a couple of older friends that have done very well for themselves, that are worth at least a few $100 million. And Gary's one of them, and I was talking to him about this, and he was saying, like, I can get more done in a day than I used to be able to get done in a few weeks, mostly because I know what to spend time on and what doesn't need my attention. And a lot of, like, life is figuring that out. What is the things that I can leverage the most? And so we do get more efficient with our time if we're growing and learning and getting better and we're figuring out those levers.
Yeah, because I was going to say, some people just live in chaos, and they're like, okay with, like,
Just,
what am I supposed to do today? And they're like, oh, that's right, I will do this. And then you waste just those little incremental seconds. I know, Jax. Is that Miss Rachel?
Tech Jack agrees.
But it's like those seconds are wasted, and then you start to accumulate all these seconds of thinking what you should be doing could have been spent on a task and completing it, But some people live in that chaos, that urgent and important quadrant of you could have planned and kind of prepared what is the most important part of my day. But some people just live in that, and I don't think that they're the high-performing individuals that we know of.
So this has been an amazing 10 years plus. Sandrini and I have been working together for 14 almost.
14 years.
And I'm super excited. This isn't the end of the F5 podcast, but we're moving in different directions. I'm excited for us to check in, though, and I think there are people who are following along with our journey. It's pretty cool. This is the executive team of Fenix Consulting Group. We have one with a baby under the age of 1. We have 2 soon-to-be moms.
Bruin.
And then Dre and I.
Hashtag not pregnant.
So it's going to be fun and exciting to see how those changes happen and how we navigate this as a team and support one another as a team as we get through this. And I think it's going to be a really cool case study of what's possible and how do we do this. But I'm super excited for everybody. I'm excited for you, Sandrini. We're going to miss you here on the West Coast for sure. Excited
we'll go
for
and
this
visit.
season. Yeah,
Yes,
for sure.
please do.
And Smalls, I can't
Sounds
wait to
good.
meet your little one. He's going to be a badass. Yes. It's gonna be a
Wild.
fun season.
What next year is going to look like.
Yeah.
Well, we were talking about in the car yesterday about how like our org events are going to look so much different moving forward, and just how cool it is that we're going to be able to share in these experiences together and have our babies grow up and be able to be like built-in buddies at these little gatherings that we have. So
Even Fareed's baby.
Yeah.
Little lake babies, little mountain babies.
Yeah. Skiing babies.
Snow, like board babies.
Snow babies.
Snow babies.
I know, like that's the one thing I'm so stoked
Excited
about.
for.
Because snowboarding is one of those, is this hobby that Charles and I love, right? And so,
And you see all these videos of the cute little tots.
And you can get them going way
Yeah.
earlier than
I
you
know,
think because
I'm
they
just
have
like-
a low center of balance.
they look,
Yeah.
Jack,
Chris learned how to ski before he learned how to walk.
No.
So it's
What?
doable.
All right.
Yeah, so
Really?
they would put
So they just
would
slide him
put,
down?
like he was a year or so, and they put him in between his dad's skis, and then they have a leash on him, so he at least understands how to move through the mountain. And then they'd get to the bottom, and he's slumped over because he's asleep. But him and his sister both learned how to ski before they learned how to walk.
Wow.
So it's lovely.
I love
Norwegian
it.
blood, man.
You gotta
God
be
bless
super
it.
confident as a parent.
Yeah.
to
Well,
be
he was
able
on
to
the
do
like the
that.
UCLA ski team, the dad,
okay.
and he's Norwegian, so it's in his blood.
Yeah.
the week I found out I was pregnant, I headed out to the mountain.
Go shred.
That's right. And you had the pass, didn't you?
I did have the pass. It was wasted, but
Yeah, it's
it is what it
okay.
is. Just happened to be the one year that Charles bought it. I was like, sorry, babe. Oh,
Those muscles.
Tell us.
He's like,
Jackson.
does that taste good?
He's trying to eat it.
Jackson
this
agrees.
is not food.
Everything in the mouth.
It may be a little while before we have another one, at least all in person. Maybe we'll
Yeah.
get some on Zoom as we check in.
Ooh, yeah, that'd be kind
be
of cool
fun.
and different.
Yeah, we can definitely do that.
that.
We will do that. We'll do maybe some check-ins and all from our spots. But I love you guys. I'm excited for this next season. A lot of really fun things happening. We'll catch you guys on the flip side.
Later.
Peace.